I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is. Eventually people are going to say, what the hell is going on? It's not enough to say it's nuts. You have to explain why it's so nuts. The invention of artificial life, the cloning of human beings, possible contact with extraterrestrials, the systems which are in place to keep the world sane are utterly inadequate to the forces that have been unleashed.
Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Today my guest is Jules, host of Greypilledpodcast. First, we're having our annual fundraiser for production of my next film, Doors of Perception Part 2. As of now, we're slated to travel to North and South Carolina and Georgia, but we would also love to be able to head out to Northern California this year as well. So right now, any donation of $50 or more, and you will get either a 1-hour private discussion with myself about any topic or topics of your choice, or a guest spot on Forbidden Knowledge News. It would be up to you. The first person to donate $50 or more will also get this beautiful oracle deck from Laura Day, The 13 Nights. The artwork and quality is amazing. It is such an awesome deck. So if you'd like to help us with the fundraiser, I have links right in the description below. Also, be sure to check out Doors of Perception. That's available now to rent or purchase from our website. It will soon be available on streaming platforms by this summer. Also, be sure to download our podcast episodes directly through Spreaker if you listen on any podcast provider. It's always free for you. And we're booking guests for June and July. If you have suggestions or you'd like to be a guest, email me forbiddenknowledgenews@gmail.com. Today I want to welcome Jules. He is host of the Greypilled Podcast, producer for Already Dead, and co-host of Elohim Etymology, Sound Science, and Sunday Chaos. Jules, welcome. How you doing?
Doing good, Chris. Good morning, man. Happy to be here.
So happy
Thank
you
you for
could make
inviting
it,
me.
man. You're another very busy guy in the independent content creation world, and I had a great time on your show a couple of months ago. You're doing great work on your podcast, sharing insights about the deeper levels of our hidden reality. Myself and many others like yourself in the conspiracy or paranormal realms have been gravitating to deeper levels of understanding as it relates to what is perceived to be unfolding in our reality with politics, the occult, symbolism, social issues, media, entertainment, education. We seem to search for the deeper levels of meaning with everything in the Matrix reality. And that's what we're going to be doing today as well. Before we do, this is your first time on, let the audience know a little bit about yourself and let them know where they can find you.
Yeah, man. I'm Jules. I do the Gray Pilled Podcast. Gray Pill's kind of my brand. Also my main podcast, I guess you could say, where I do my deep dives and my interviews, my swap casts and stuff like that. I also do a show called Elohim Etymology with my co-host Adrian West. He's an author and a video editor. He's a very bright individual. We found a common interest in these ancient stories and kind of throughout time how a lot of these certain deities were rebranded and worshipped throughout the ages. And so he was episode 1 of Grey Pilled. Shortly after that, I asked him, "Hey, you wanna do this little pantheon project with me?" And it kind of turned into what it is. So that's one of my shows I do. I also do Sound Science with the Paranoid American. Shout out Thomas. Right. We have one later today, actually, with Foundering is going to be coming on. So that's going to be a good time. It's a show where we basically get people from the conspiracy, occult research realm and kind of get them in there. Usually people who have like a musical past or are really into music. they pick their 5 favorite albums, and we kind of dive into each one and analyze them and talk about them, listen to them as well. So it's a fun show. I'm a drummer, grew up playing music, so it's a big part of who I am, you know.
Right.
Then I have a show I produce for on Tuesdays called Already Dead. This is with Jose Galison and Austin Picard. They're actually right now going and hanging out with Jake Shields on his podcast. So that's a W for them.
I think I have Austin coming on next week or the week after, so that's pretty cool.
He told me, yeah, man. He told me he had watched our episode and he's stoked to come on and talk to you, dude. And he's a treasure trove of knowledge when it comes to the parapolitical. A lot of these cults and these like dark occult groups. So yeah, I think you'll have a good time with him. And then I have a show I do every other Sunday with my buddy Conspiracy Extremist called Sunday Chaos. It's kind of our degenerate news slash culture review of the week, where we kind of make fun of people and have a laugh or two. So which I think is good to do sometimes, because it's some research that you can get into, man. It can really take you down some dark rabbit holes. You know what I mean?
100%. Well, I love it, man. You're out there, you're getting the work done, you're putting your stuff out there, and you're doing tons of it, which is actually the key in this space to getting yourself out there and having any level of success, is to put out as much content as possible, which you start to realize once you get in this space. But tell us a little bit about what brought you to this weird world of conspiracies and metaphysics and the occult. Most people have heard my story, but it was a kind of abrupt awakening that took me to this direction, and most of my life I was sleeping. But tell us a little bit about your story.
Well, I could probably relate to you on the sleeping part. I woke up to the powers that be controlling and manipulating our reality. I guess back in around 2012, 2013, my wife, she was my girlfriend at the time, and showed me that famous Alex Jones footage of Bohemian Grove, and had to explain to me that these are our world leaders here congregating and doing these mock rituals. And I was just left in shock. I was like, what? This isn't just some play or some, she's, no, this is real. And well, I mean, I guess you could say some rituals are kind of like a play of some sort. You know what I mean? They're putting on this show or whatever. But from that, man, I just kind of went past the whole the moon landing was fake and gay, and the same people that did 9/11 killed JFK, and all that kind of base conspiracy stuff that you start off at. Started getting into the whole Illuminati bloodlines, Hollywood symbolism, all that stuff going on. It wasn't till after that. I guess that was throughout, like from 2013 to 2018. I kind of knew what was going on, but man, I was not at my best in my own life at that time, so I wasn't too much focused on it. But what until I got clean off of opiates in 2018, where I kind of had this spiritual awakening, and started kind of looking back into this stuff and started finding these deeper meanings. And not only that, but like these connections to everything else. And so it went from like researching these bloodlines to who are these people, where do they come from? Who are these deities that they're worshiping? And then you go into that, and it's a whole different story. You start looking into ancient civilizations, a lot of these ancient texts, and you go through like the ancient aliens thing and all this. But then I started getting into the esoteric and the deeper meanings behind a lot of this stuff, and that's where I think I kind of found my calling as far as my research and really what I like to do. Like I love researching this stuff now. It opens my eyes every time to some new concept or something that I didn't see before. You know what I mean? That's what the esoteric is, right? Something that you kind of have to look past the exoteric and, look a little further. I guess you could say with your mind's eye, not really your two eyes that you use to see. But and it led me into researching the occult, a lot of these ancient occult groups. I'm now looking into natural occultism, alchemy. Went on Secret Society of Good Guys last night. Talked about egregores. Did another show yesterday on Abraxas and the Demiurge. So like it's once you get to a certain level of understanding, all these other things kind of start to make sense. It makes it a whole lot more interesting for me to dive into, man. And so that's kind of where I am now, is learning it. But I'm starting to realize that a lot of this stuff has, like, there's different ways to interpret it.
Yeah.
And it could either one thing be true or maybe all of it be true at the same time. But yeah, man, no, this is that's kind of where I am now. I still do my Pantheon show, and I still dabble into conspiracies and stuff happening kind of on the world stage today. But most of my focus is on a lot of these esoteric teachings and sharing them with people.
Right on.
You don't, trying to tell people you don't have to go join a lodge or, go do this or that, this or that to find a doorway into learning about this stuff. You can come watch Grey Pilled, and there's tons of other shows too that that talk about the same stuff. So I think it's good that people are starting to talk about this more and more, and making it to where everyone can learn about it. I don't think it's for everyone. It is a slippery slope, in my opinion, especially I think me and you have talked about this before. If you're not aligned correctly, energetically, right, with whatever you believe in or whatever God you pray to, or I think some people it may not be for everybody, but
right on. Well, since you've had experience in the deeper levels of the conspiratorial metaphysical pool, let's dive in there and work our way through. I'd like to get your perspective on what seems to be two of the most prevalent possibilities that at least pass through my show and come up in discussions quite often, is the true nature of our experience here. Is this experience for us, by some infinite creator being that created this experience for growth and understanding, for the fractalization of the one to experience, and then from those experiences learn and grow from the worst of it and the best of it? And then the other side is that this reality, this whatever this experience is, has been infiltrated by some sort of negative energy, the demiurge, as you mentioned earlier. It had set up this complete false reality that we are experiencing in totality right now, a simulated matrix.
Well, yeah, man. I think we are spiritual beings having a physical experience. I think our souls, or what you would call like your eternal flame, has existed for some time. And, getting into the conversation of how old the earth is, it's there's a lot of theories out there, but I think that, we were created to exist here, learn and to grow. And it absolutely was infiltrated. And you can say, the archons or the fallen angels. There's a lot of ways to interpret who these entities are. But they've kind of turned it into like an ant farm. You know what I mean? And so I think all the hustle and bustle of like your everyday life, going to work, paying bills and all that stuff, that's there to keep us from experiencing real growth. And I was talking about this with my wife. I was like, if I didn't have to work and I could just, focus on uh, spiritual growth and attaining the my peak consciousness,
Enlightenment.
right? Like, yeah, my peak enlightenment, without having to worry about this and that, going, paying bills and doing all this stuff, dude. It's like, here's a good analogy is these actors, they're able to study for a role, and that's all they do, right? So they master that role. Whether what's that movie? My nephew brought it up to me, Whiplash, where the guy's playing drums and stuff. The guy may have not been a drummer at all, but he sat there for years and studied drums, playing drums, and eventually, became an expert at it. And I think that's what we're meant to do with a lot of this ancient knowledge. How do we become spiritually in tune with nature, right? With the creator, with whatever positive force is in this reality, and how do we help our spirit grow? Because people are so stuck in this material world, man, and I think that is like a trap in a way, like a soul trap. Like if we don't reach that level of consciousness, do we ascend somewhere, or are we just stuck in like a constant reincarnation cycle?
Right.
You know what I mean, man? Like it's scary to think about, but what I've noticed is the more uncomfortable things make you as you discuss them, kind of better it is. You know what I mean? Like you understand it a lot more. There's so many things, and people, it happens a lot with religion. With people, when you try to talk about religion, people will shut it down immediately, man, or they'll start to argue. They don't want to break kind of this mold that they've made for themselves through dogma and growing up indoctrinated in a certain church. And if someone needs religion to get through the day, man, that's to each his own. But I think there's something deeper to that that we experience by ourselves, right? You have your own connection with Christ or with the Creator. No, I don't think anyone's relationship is the same with their higher power. You know what I mean? So, and that goes with, all these different denominations of the church. And I think a lot of this stuff is just to keep us in this cycle of infighting. And in that way, we don't really get to understand our true nature of why we're here.
Well, when we look at the control mechanisms of this reality, institutions, the political systems, the most powerful people, and many are of the belief that these groups and individuals are very aware of the deepest levels of our reality, and they use it to gain power. But I wonder, to what level are they really aware? And if some of the lower level players, and I'm considering politicians and even some world leaders, lower level players, because I don't think we know who the most powerful people in the world are, and I'm sure they have an awareness of the mystical and occult side of reality and how to manipulate it in certain ways. But to the extent that many people are putting out there as a possibility, I'm not sure if they are that powerful. The way I look at it as a possibility is that there's this synchronistic layer of reality, this as above, so below metaphysical realm where what we experience in this physical realm is also unfolding in a metaphysical realm. It affects things in our reality, and this reality affects things in that as well. And I'm wondering if, like you said, these people are just playing a role, but they may not even be aware to what extent they are playing a role. And some of the agendas being put forward, they may believe are for their benefit. They may believe that they're in control of things, but it may have a much bigger outcome in mind, and there may be some higher intelligence behind all of this, kind of orchestrating things and pulling strings in certain ways that even the most powerful aren't even aware of. What do you think?
Well, yeah, dude, and you're talking about the whole microcosm and the macrocosm. What happens here, I definitely believe is happening in what some people would call like the upside down, right? Like the ethereal realm, the astral realm. Yeah, man, no, and it seems like in a lot of these ancient teachings, that the ancients did figure out maybe how to escape, right? What they would call the matrix or whatever. But that these lesser deities also figured out, like, hey, there's a way that we can attain power and, in a way, everlasting life here in this realm through, uh, you know, these people, through these humans. And that's when you look into, like, dude, all the occult symbolism in pop culture and people wearing all these basic idols on their shirts, you know what I mean, and listening to their music. You get this sense of like a deity worship in some way. That's like, who are these lower level players connected to? Right? Like, what main entity are they connected to? Went on Nephilim Death Squad a few weeks ago to discuss that SNL episode where Lady Gaga's on there and they're doing the mock ritual to Lamashtu, who is the Sumerian goddess of disease and death. Yeah,
Huh.
but it's a bit.
I don't think I saw that one.
Right? Like, it's a comedy bit. Yeah, dude. Well, they're on there eating heart, and they kind of related into the Indiana Jones the Temple of Doom scene where he's eating the heart in the chamber inside the cave or whatever. But at the same time, you have someone who is I think, a known high priestess, Lady Gaga, being an acolyte of Marina Abramovic, right? Because I think she's tied into some other Crowleyan occult school. But, performing this ritual on stage, and all these people are eating it up. No one has discernment whether, like, you may have a few people out there that are like, this doesn't really feel right. You know what I mean? But I think they do this with everything, with all these Super Bowls and award shows, and they garner all this attention from people, and in essence, energy, right? And they use that to their advantage. But I do think it goes back, way back into antiquity, with stories of these demigods or these fallen beings that manipulate our reality and it talks about in the stories of the Anunnaki. We mined gold. Were we really like mining gold, or is gold just another word for our like divine essence or something? You know what I mean? I've had to look at that in a few ways, dude. That's when I was talking to you about, like, when I first started getting into those stories and stuff. Now I look at all these other ways of interpreting them. Like, are they symbolic? Is this astrotheology? Are they archetypes? Are these just ancient humans? A lot of these ancient stories, you see a lot of proclivities we have in these ancient deities. It's like they pass these down to us. Like, do we come from these fallen angels? Did they father the earliest tribes of man? Because I do think that Adam with multiple tribes of men.
It does seem like the lines between these astral or etheric realms and the real reality were extremely blurred throughout our ancient history based on these ancient texts. And it makes me wonder, did they just have more access to these realms? Were they able to interpret what is happening as above, so below much easier than we can now because they weren't being poisoned by all the toxins that degrade our senses these days, and they had ability to commune with these things?
Yeah, man. Yeah, no. And you see it in these ancient depictions of these beings. Like, they had these watches on and these bags with the golden manna from heaven and all this stuff. And it's like, there's all this symbolism they use that only a certain class of people here on this earth understand. Right? So it's like they're receiving, like, we look at it just from this basic, like, oh, they're drawing them with this or that. But this elite class can see many different stories being told.
I like to give the example of the Book of Revelations. There's all this insane stuff unfolding, locusts and demons and the sky turning black and all of these crazy, insane things. But what if this is what's occurring in these etheric realms? And it also has an effect on our material world, but it's not quite as extreme as they're depicting it. But in the astral, it may be exactly what they're depicting. I don't know. I wonder about that.
Well, that's the talk about the egregore as well. If it exists in this realm, then it has to exist in the astral realm as well as the celestial realm, right? You see all these ancient depictions of people pointing up and pointing down, the as above, so below. Whatever happens in heaven happens on earth, right? It's mirrored. And you see a lot of that in pop culture as well. They try to portray a lot of these stories. And I've come to the conclusion about that, man. A lot of these ancient stories could just all be symbolic. You know what I mean? But I'd like to believe that the creator takes what happens in a heavenly realm and manifests it here on earth. If he is the creator, in fact, like, why wouldn't he be able to do that?
100%.
It could be true in both aspects.
Well, you mentioned natural occultism, and I'd like you to get into a little bit deeper of what your understanding of this is. But when I hear that, I think of there's this natural synchronistic layer of reality, this energetic layer that we have access to, that we always have. But there's also a very synthetic and unnatural occulted energetic layer that is being manipulated by the use of technology and what we're surrounded with now with frequency waves, algorithms, and all of the technological monstrosities that humankind has brought forward seems to be a more synthetic type of occultism. Is this what you're getting at?
Yeah, definitely. These things that happen naturally in nature, these unseen forces, you could call it dark night of the soul, all this stuff that we go through, like, not even knowing that, like, oh, this stuff that's happening to us is esoteric, right? Spiritual healing, prayer, all this stuff, it would be considered white magic, And so I do think a lot of these esoteric teachings are subverted and used for material gains and to kind of manifest this dark reality, because I think a lot of this knowledge was, in fact, first came from the creator. and that it was taken and used, I guess you could say, by the fallen angels, by this class of fallen, who I think are the same entities still being worshipped today. I mean, you see them rebranded over time in all these different civilizations, and they're, you could look at them just as an expression of a certain like a characteristic, right? Like the mighty hunter, or fertility, right? All this different stuff that they represent. Well, I mean, if that's the case, then I mean, I don't know why they're being portrayed in some of these stories as literal beings.
That's the big question.
Making journeys.
Were these physical incarnations? Were these extraterrestrials? Were these energetic thought forms that communicated with us? Were these etheric, astral, light body beings? That's the questions that we have to ask when it comes to what exactly are the fallen angels. And many I spoke to recently believe it is sort of like an egregoric intelligence that can influence us and communicate with us.
Absolutely, dude. And like, did it start off like that? Like, what came first, the chicken or the egg, right? I think that these beings, they used to have this form where they were more of, a light body, or their spirit, right? And then falling from grace, defying the creator, choosing to manifest here on earth, and then stay here, manifested physically. Maybe they lost that gift to ascend back up, and in such cases fall, right? And I mean, you have to think at it this way, and this is why I kind of interpret these stories in many different ways now. Like, were these people dreaming? Were they eating psilocybin and seeing these entities, going to these other realms, Shambhala, Valhalla, and like communicating with some other worldly entity, some non-physical being? Or did it, like what we just said, is it true that if they exist in this realm, they exist here as well? Or are they being created, like, an egregore, a thought form? Are they being created in another realm, and then through some kind of occult ritual being invoked into our physical reality?
This also depends on
in such cases,
who you're going to speak with, what type of magical practitioner, what type of rituals people are doing. But I've heard different perspectives on this as far as the natural level of magic that we have access to, that we are naturally born with a level of, for lack of a better word, magic that comes from source or creator that we have access to and should be able to use freely. But there's also this other level where we can reach out to outside entities and they can do the magic for us. They can assist us and reward us for things, but there's also this give and take. You have to provide something for that entity, and that's where the magical practices get a little dark and iffy.
Yeah, you have a price to pay, right? I do think we are born clairvoyant, man. Yeah, I think that clairvoyancy is taken from us, just by being thrust into this society and having to go to school. And you tell your parents, like, hey, you're a 5-6-year-old kid, and you tell your parents, hey, I miss my wife and kids, and they're like, oh, quit being silly. They don't stop to think, wait a minute, my son had a wife and kids,
right?
Should I talk to him more about this? Should I see, not knowing that this guy may have been here before. You know, man, me and my wife have talked about this. Um, I think we may keep coming back here until we finally do reach that peak enlightenment, that what people call Christ, right? Christos. And we kind of are recycled in a way. Now, I think there's a lot. I mean, if you think about it, bro, there's probably so many people that go through life and they don't even touch on any of this, right? And it truly like saddens me for a lot of people. You know, people that are struggling with addiction, people that are struggling with weight problems. You know, it's like a lot of this knowledge could set them free, you know, from what is going on in their lives to, you know, to where they have these problems. But that's what I was saying, man, is like if we're distracted by the everyday going to work and paying bills and this and that, what are we eating for dinner? You know, all this stuff. It's like, how do you have time to explore these different ideas and teachings and actually sit down to learn about them? But that's why we see like with these people who have money, who don't have to like live like the everyday, you know, Joe Schmo or whoever, they do have the time to sit there and learn about all this stuff and in a way master it, right? But I don't think the people who practice a lot of this stuff, like I said, I think it's subverted for worldly gains.
You mentioned reincarnation a few times. I find this very interesting, the possibility that some of the most powerful groups or individuals in the world have the knowledge of how to reincarnate into the most wealthy and powerful families, and they just keep coming back into that position, having the same power. I've heard Aleister Crowley believes he's a reincarnation of John Dee. Some of these other black occultists throughout history believe that they're reincarnations of this person or that person. What do you think about that?
Absolutely, dude. And I think that ties into the Black Lodge in some way, right? Like if some of these people quote unquote sell their soul, or you know they give their soul up for whatever they gain here on in this realm, do they go to like a waiting room somewhere where, you know, they're about to be used again in this person, but that's like a part of this deal that they have, right? For all the knowledge they received in a prior life. Oh, absolutely, man. No, I think, and I think through these certain rites and rituals of these different occult groups that they can be invoked. That's funny. I didn't know Crowley thought that he was the reincarnation of John
and
Dee.
some other
that makes a
occultists
lot of sense.
From an earlier time period. He was like the combination of these two.
Oh my God, man. I mean, but could he have done rituals to ensure that? You know what I mean? Or would that have had to happen when he was a child, maybe, or before his birth? Right? Because it's like, I mean, I don't know if you've ever looked at this, but like the birth canal is somewhat of a portal, right? It's a portal from somewhere else into this dimension. And that's why, I mean, you see women are kept out of a lot, like the divine feminine is, you know, in the public, it's erased from a lot of stuff. You know what I mean? Like history and all this stuff. I think that has a much larger role to play as well. As far as like, without women, there wouldn't be any men.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And so, but yeah, dude, no, I think there is a way, especially in occult ritual, for these people to come back in a certain fashion, like because they have to be a part of the same group. Maybe, like I said, it has to do with the certain rites or the rituals that they do to invoke this spirit back into this body. Now, I'm sure they could do this with a grown adult as well, right? But you've read about this before, I'm sure, with invoking demons into people. It's said that the Osiris Risen, those kind of rituals happen with the president, right? They happen under the White House during the inauguration of the president. The spirit of Osiris is being invoked and all this stuff. I think that could be true on a much larger scale. It's like the rebranding of these ancient deities into today through these modern day characters that we see on the world stage at every day. Are they just playing out these ancient stories and these ancient battles again and again? But it's become so nuanced now that we really can't recognize it unless you go back and learn about a lot of this ancient stuff. You know what I mean?
Well, what are your thoughts on what is unfolding now, what it truly represents in these other spiritual realms, especially what we're experiencing here in the United States? Many are hypnotized by some of the things occurring and believe that this administration could do no wrong and they're here to save the planet. But those of us that have eyes to see and can step back and get a bigger picture of everything see the technocratic takeover of our reality, that these very powerful people have just rebranded themselves as white hats and Republicans and Christians, and they're still rolling out the very same agenda as everyone's worst fear is a technocratic slave system, complete surveillance, social credit system, everything that we have been hearing about that are now rolling it out with very little resistance because they have hypnotized a huge portion of society.
Dude. Oh, Chris. Yeah, man. And that's, you got the MAGA, right? The Magus. Trump is the magician, right? He has fooled so many people, man. I voted for him back in 2016, and it was a good 4 years. My tax returns were looking good. Gas was cheap. And then we get COVID and we get the Biden era and it's chaos, right? Degradation of society, even more. And so now, we're given this hope with Trump. And that's what I think it was designed to do, man. It's like, oh, well, you look over here and you see what we could have, this thing of, a lot of people look at it as accelerationism. Put Kamala in office and this shit goes downhill real fast. You know what I mean? But I think the latter, being Trump, it's going to go downhill a little bit slower maybe, but I think this was their plan, dude. With January 6th, since our last episode, I went on tinfoil hat.
Yeah, it was great.
And I had mentioned that that the assassination I don't think was real. The attempted assassination of Trump. I think it was all theater, dude. And I think they show this to us. It's some like revelation of the method kind of way. But I mean, is Trump the Moshiach that these maniacal rabbis over in Israel are talking about being the new King Cyrus and how he is going to make Israel great again? Because it's slowly turned from MAGA to MEGA, or
Well, it's so difficult to get a gauge on where people stand, especially now with the algorithm and AI infiltration into social media and the independent content creation space. We're stuck in these echo chambers, and we have no idea what other people are thinking or bringing to the table. And those people aren't going to see much of our content because it's been so walled off to certain groups of people, and it's getting worse. The algorithms are catering to other algorithms. It's not about what they're desiring to see. It's about what the AI chooses for us to see. So therefore, it's very difficult for myself and others to get a gauge on where the collective is. How do we feel about everything? All we're seeing is what social media is telling us how to feel about things, but how are the real people out in the street really feeling about how things are unfolding? And I can get out and talk to people in my vicinity. I can travel across the state. I can travel across the world in person and talk to people and find out what's going on. But it's not that easy. So what we're subjected to is being able to have one-on-one conversations like this over Zoom or group conversations or talking to people online. But when it comes to any kind of news or large-scale information, we're at the mercy of the algorithms. So how do you feel that most people are reacting to things just based on your personal interactions?
Well, like you said, I think Trump getting elected has made a lot of people just kind of accept it, right? They're like, well, this is better than the other, right?
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people are very regretful now, and they're seeing that, why are we sending all this money to this other country when places like North Carolina and Eastern Tennessee, that have been devastated by natural disasters, right? Couldn't be HARP or anything. Why aren't we helping our own people? Why aren't we putting this place first? And I think our reality is being manipulated in a way by Kabbalah mysticism, the light and the dark, right? And you'll see this in speeches from Netanyahu talking about, the sons of light, the sons of dark, all this stuff, very dualistic, right? And then at the same time, you got all these prophecies about the destruction of Edom, which would be the new Rome or America, right? And I just think that we're given this idea that there is this enemy, right? The deep state. But could that also be, could the deep state be telling us like, hey, here's this deep state, go worry about them. Don't look over here. Like the Wizard of Oz. Don't look behind the curtain, right? You may not like what you find. And so I think, dude, I think a lot of people are starting to wake up to this now, that it's just political theater, that these people are in these occult groups together. Yeah. It's a great work, right? Like what Crowley would say, it's the great work coming to fruition.
Right on. Now,
but I think on a mass scale, that does manipulate our reality and what we see, how we perceive things. Definitely. That's why so many people have so many conflicting views about politics and religion. Excuse me. That it's, all there to just make us bicker about it, so we don't look behind the curtain and see the real picture.
Right on. Well, I don't want to spin the whole show as if there's no hope, because I do believe there is. I do believe that we hold more power than we could ever realize. And something I've listened to recently gives me another glimmer of hope. And my mind reaches out to all the possibilities with this. Have you heard the Telepathy Tapes yet?
I haven't. I heard Top and Raven talking about them. My wife has brought them up to me, but I have not sat down and actually looked at them at face value. What could you
Well,
kind of
basically, it's
tell me a little bit
this
about
lady, Kai Dickens, who is doing this mass scientific study on non-speaking autistic young adults and children, and they have
Right.
undeniable telepathic abilities, consciousness abilities, and beyond. They can see spirits. They claim they can talk to God and other spiritual beings,
wow.
but this is something that has been extremely suppressed, I find out, by our education system at the lowest level for a very long time. Teachers and principals have been aware that these children are capable of this, but they have been told, shut up, don't say anything about it. And it's all starting to come out now. I don't see how it was suppressed for as long as it was, but apparently these children are not only a whole person in there with a whole personality, they are much more, and they are very spiritual. They seem to be very connected to God. They all claim to talk to God. They all claim to be telepathic. They can hear their parents' thoughts. They can predict future events. They can speak multiple languages before the time they are like 3 or 4 years old. The only thing is they can't speak, and most of their motor skills are really not up to par, so they have to be taken care of their whole life. And many speculate that this could be from vaccinations, the whole autism epidemic, and it was looked at as something very negative. I start to wonder about that now. I don't know. We'd have to do much more studies into the physiology of these people and find out if it's at all even linked to the vaccines, which I'm not saying it isn't. It could be. But when we look at what these children are capable of, that opens up many new questions as to, first of all, how did they get that way? Why now? Why does it seem to be a growing thing? There are more non-speaking autistic children in the world than there has ever been, and the percentage rates keep shooting up for some reason. So why this gives me hope is these kids can understand everything. They have access to all the knowledge in the universe. Could it be that there is a new era of human incarnated in this planet, and we have to try and kind of unlock them to get their full potential? And maybe they have some information that could help us out as humanity. I don't know, but hearing I listened to the entire first season. I finished it the other day. They're going to be coming out with the second season. And for some reason, just something about it all seems like there's something really big happening with these kids. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, are these the indigo children of this new age? You know, I'm sure you've seen The Matrix. You know the one Oracle lady whenever Neo went to her house, there were all these children there, right? They could bend spoons. Yeah. They could do all this stuff with their minds. It's kind of telling, right? It's like, how long have there been like children like this? And are these the kids that somehow go missing, you know, that somehow get caught up in a school shooting, right? Does the government or the powers that be, do they have like foresight or some kind of way of knowing who these kids are? Because I'm pretty sure the deep state or whoever, whatever you want to call them, has their own remote viewers who can go and basically scope out what kids. Yeah, definitely, dude. There's this one chick who was telling the story where she went and remote viewed a base at Antarctica or something, and she gets in there and all of a sudden she gets booted by one of these other guys who are remote viewing from the base, basically protecting the base, right? Dude, it's crazy to think about, because it's like, I'm pretty sure clairvoyancy in a child, from what I've read in some of these esoteric teachings, is at its peak until like age 7, maybe age 7 or 8. And if it's not like taught or dealt with properly, that they could lose it, right?
Well, what's interesting about these
or
kids
that
is they don't lose it. They seem to lose touch with their physical self more over time and become more immersed into their light body, into their spiritual body. And it becomes more and more difficult for them to kind of integrate into their physical body and realize that it's there. And they just become more and more inward in this kind of light being awareness as time goes on.
That's incredible, dude. So they're not like, so they're more in touch with what we should be in touch with, right? Yes. But they're in touch with it naturally, it seems. But it's being said that it's unnatural, right? That, wow, man, these kids should be protected. I think these kids should grow up around each other, away from society and all the bullshit happening in culture, and I think they should be guided. I don't know by who, I because it's hard to say. It's like
maybe they need to guide us. Maybe they have the answers, and we need to start listening to them. It's incredible, though.
Maybe so.
I highly recommend everyone listening go check out the Telepathy Tapes. You have any thoughts? Email me. Reach out to Jules, reach out to somebody, get your thoughts out there, because I think this is really an incredible emerging discovery that we're making.
I'm gonna go dive into that, dude, because I heard about it and I was like, yeah, I'm sure I'll come across it and kind of look at it, but I've seemed to forgotten about it, I guess. Yeah, no, I definitely need to go look at those. And like how long have kids like this? How long have they existed? They
had studies going back to the 90s, according to Ty, the host of this show, that have been buried by academia, never to see the light of day, because it goes against the narrative, and for some reason they do not want this getting out. But they had plenty of studies done in the 90s that were just buried that she happened to dig up, which is very interesting as well.
Well, yeah, and dude, if you think about it, if these studies were to get out and the everyday normie got a hold of them and their kid acted very similar to these kids, maybe there's more of these types of special children out there than we even know, and it would kind of wake some of the normies up to that, like, oh, I think my kid has special powers or has this ability to see beyond this realm, to see past the veil. You know what I mean? My daughter even, man, she says some stuff sometimes to where I'm like, what did you just say? How would you know that? Like she was saying, oh man, I wish I could have, I wish I knew what it was that she said. It happened a few months ago. She said something and predicted something that happened like later that day, and my wife told me about it when I got home, and I'm just like, what? Yeah. Next time something like it happens, I'll shoot you a message and kind of tell you. Maybe I'll go talk to her and a little bit and see what the few things were that did happen, and kind of let you know, because like I said, this stuff could be more common than we know.
Yeah, man. And I wonder, what if these kids have been vaccinated like the rest of us, but the vaccine had an effect on us and not them, and maybe it didn't take completely and they still have access to something that they shouldn't. Because how long has these parasitic power bottoms been talking about vaccinating against spirituality and the God gene and things like that? So what if it kind of backfired with some of these kids? I don't know. I have to wonder these things because it's really fascinating.
Parasitic power bottoms. I like that. Yeah, what if it did backfire and the creator was just like, yeah, here you go. Like, you wanted to suppress this, I'm gonna make their gifts even stronger now.
I don't know, man. It's
you know what
crazy.
I mean? That's wild, dude. I didn't even know. Like I said, I heard about the tapes. Now I got to go look into them.
Yeah, highly recommend everyone do that.
Possibly do it.
Well, we got a few minutes left, man. Is there anything else that we didn't get to that you'd like to cover today?
Well, man, dude, I love talking to you, Chris. There's something about you where I feel like I can talk about really any of this stuff with you, and you're open to all of it.
Oh yeah.
I get a lot of pushback with my beliefs, my religious beliefs regarding Christianity and Christ. I kind of have a different outlook on it than most people, you know. And so it's a breath of fresh air coming on here and just being able to talk to people like yourself, and you've had these experiences too in your own life.
Yeah.
When you came on my show, man, I mean, those stories you told, that's still one of my most watched episodes right now. I'm pretty sure I still have people commenting on it, and it was one of my top 3 favorite that I've done.
Oh, thank you, man. Thank you for having me on too.
Definitely, dude. I'd love to get you on again. I've been thinking about maybe starting to do like little roundtables and stuff. You know what I mean? Like just having like 4 or 5 people on to discuss a few things. Maybe some of us have a different opinion about something, or but we can find commonalities, because I do think that that a lot of this stuff is linked more than it's not.
Yeah, I always say that we all have those little puzzle pieces. The only way we're going to solve it is to come together, put them together.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And I think getting into this hidden knowledge, this ancient hidden knowledge, and making it mainstream, because like I said, it's not for everybody. And the occult research of the occult sciences is a slippery slope for some people, I'd say. I say it a lot. I don't try to push people to go out there and read some of these texts, or because you never know where someone is in life, if they could even handle stuff like that, or what they would use it for. I think intention is a big part in a lot of this stuff, man. The intention of what you want to learn and how you can use it.
I'd add our belief in what's possible to that as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't think you should limit your beliefs at all. I think anything and everything is absolutely possible.
Right on.
And that's the whole thing behind Grey Pilled, man. It's like, we talked about all these black pills, but there is hope, right? You can't be completely naive and just, dismiss all the stuff happening in the shadows, but you don't want to be completely just, gloom and doom, and that we're screwed and there's no hope for humanity, because there is hope, but it's not anyone coming to save us. We have to do the work.
100%.
Right
on, man.
Definitely.
That is a great note to end on. Jules, thank you so much for coming on. Wonderful information. We'll definitely have to do this again. Before we go, remind everyone where they can find all your content.
Yeah, guys. X at greypilledpod. I'm on Instagram, greypilled_podcast. I post on there sometimes. Rumble, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Patreon. Doing a lot of cool stuff on Patreon. My Elohim etymologies, they go to Patreon first before they're dropped to the public. You kind of get the whole experience, the unedited, I guess you could say the unedited version on there, as well as my Patreon-only esoteric book reviews, in which in the past few weeks we've talked about Melchizedek and the Mystery of Fire, Initiates of the Flame, also this other book on natural occultism that I'm starting up here soon on Patreon. Those are Patreon-only episodes, so there is Patreon-only content. Got a few tiers on there. Also, the link to the Discord. Free stickers. I got some stickers that are coming, guys. Go to paranoidamerican.com/discount/graypilled for 10% off your purchase there. And yeah, Chris, I always enjoy our conversations, man. Thank you for having me.
Man,
brother.
we'll definitely do it again. And until next time, everyone, have a wonderful evening. We'll talk again tomorrow. See y'all then.